If you compare 1 Chronicles 21 to its exact parallel in 2 Samuel, you'll find what looks like a glaring contradiction. Samuel says God incited David to take a census, but Chronicles says it was Satan. So, which is it? Today we're diving into why the chronicler made this deliberate, controversial choice and what it reveals about how God handles human rebellion. King David, once a humble shepherd tending his flock on the rugged hillsides, had risen from obscurity to become the most celebrated ruler in Israel's history. Now he ruled Israel in strength and glory, his throne established in a magnificent palace, admired by his people and feared by his enemies. Yet even the greatest leaders can falter, and moments of weakness can come when least expected. David, despite his wisdom and faith, was not immune to temptation. When an adversary incited David to count his fighting men, it wasn't just about numbers, it was about pride, a subtle but dangerous shift from trusting in God's protection to relying on military might and human strength. Joab, David's loyal commander, recognized the peril in this command. He pleaded with the king, "Why bring guilt on Israel? Why risk the Lord's anger for the sake of a census?" But David, determined and unwavering, insisted that the census be carried out. The royal scribes and officials began their work, moving from tribe to tribe, counting every able-bodied man. Joab obeyed, but his heart was troubled, sensing the spiritual danger in David's command. He knew that this act could have consequences far beyond what anyone imagined. As the count stretched across the land, a shadow fell over Israel, a king's pride setting the stage for consequences none could foresee. The people sensed a change in the air, an unease that crept through villages and cities alike. The gravity of David's decision would soon be felt by the entire nation, as the fate of Israel hung in the balance, waiting for the outcome of one man's choice. The census was finally complete, a monumental task that had taken months of careful counting and record-keeping across the vast lands of Israel. Every tribe, every family, every able-bodied man had been tallied, their names and numbers inscribed onto ancient scrolls by diligent scribes. Joab, the commander, returned to King David with staggering numbers. Over 1 million fighting men stood ready for battle, a force unmatched in the region. The nation seemed powerful, secure, and invincible. Yet as the numbers echoed in the king's chamber, David's pride swelled, only to be pierced by a sudden, overwhelming sense of guilt. He realized his trust had shifted from God to the strength of his armies. Stricken with remorse, David fell to his knees and confessed, "I have sinned greatly by doing this. Please, Lord, take away the guilt of your servant, for I have acted very foolishly." In response, God sent the prophet Gad to David with a dire message. The king would not escape the consequences of his actions. He was given a terrible choice: 3 years of famine, 3 months of fleeing before his enemies, or 3 days of devastating plague upon the land. Faced with this impossible decision, David's heart ached. He pleaded with God, saying, "Let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is very great, but do not let me fall into human hands." With a heavy heart, David chose the plague, trusting that even in judgment, God's compassion would prevail over wrath. As dark clouds gathered over Jerusalem, the fate of the entire nation now hung in the balance. Divine justice was about to sweep across the land, and no one would be left untouched. In this moment of crisis, David's humility and faith would be tested as never before, as he sought mercy not just for himself, but for all his people. The plague struck swiftly, like a shadow sweeping across the land, silent and unstoppable, leaving fear and sorrow in its wake. In just a matter of days, 70,000 souls perished, their lives claimed by the relentless hand of judgment. The city mourned, and the cries of the grieving echoed through empty streets. Above Jerusalem, the angel of the Lord appeared, an awe-inspiring figure, sword drawn and gleaming, poised to bring destruction upon the city's heart. David and the elders, clothed in sackcloth, witnessed the angel's terrible presence. Overwhelmed by anguish and fear, they fell to the ground, their hearts heavy with guilt and sorrow. In desperation, David cried out, "Was it not I who sinned? These people are innocent. Let your hand fall on me and my family, not them." His voice trembled with emotion, pleading for mercy. In this moment, David's heart as a shepherd was revealed. Willing to bear the cost for his people, he stood as their protector, ready to sacrifice himself for their safety. God saw David's repentance and selfless plea. The sincerity of his heart moved the heavens, and his willingness to accept blame brought hope to the suffering nation. The Lord commanded the angel, "Enough, withdraw your hand." Instantly the threat was lifted, and peace began to return to the land. The judgment was halted at the threshing floor of Ornan, a place that would forever be remembered as the turning point of mercy and forgiveness. At Ornan's threshing floor, where judgment stopped, God gave David a new command: build an altar here. David approached Ornan, who offered the site and oxen freely, but David insisted on paying full price. "I will not offer to God what costs me nothing." David's sacrifice was personal, costly, and sincere. On this ground, the place of judgment became a place of worship and mercy. The altar marked the turning point, where God's wrath gave way to forgiveness. This humble threshing floor would become the foundation for Israel's future temple. A site of sorrow was transformed into a symbol of hope. David built the altar and offered sacrifices. God answered with fire from heaven, accepting David's repentance. The plague ended and peace was restored. This very spot, Mount Moriah, would become the site of Solomon's temple, the heart of Israel's worship. David's costly sacrifice foreshadowed a greater redemption to come. The story points to Jesus, the King who offered himself to end the plague of sin for all. Pride brings destruction, but repentance and sacrifice open the door to mercy. The lesson endures. God's mercy is greater than our failures, and true worship always costs us something. Are you ready to continue? Just click here and come along with me to the next chapter.